No, it's just one of them. Look at this stagecoach. We can, look at this wood and wiper still there. It's just made. Yeah.
Village of Salado, regular Board of Aldermen meeting, Salado Municipal Building, 301 North Stagecoach, Salado, Texas, June 20th, 2019. The time is 6:31. The agenda is before you. The call to order. Call the roll, please, City Secretary. Here. 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 May we bow our head for the invocation, please? And may you pray to the God of your choice. Amen. Let us stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Don, number one.
Mayor, we've received a request to delay that until the August meeting, the first meeting in August. So your motion would be to continue this item until the first meeting in August.
I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion approved.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Discussion.
Don, I did want to bring up that if this does not go the first week of August, is there a way that we can just drop it off our agenda altogether? Because it's been forwarded enough times.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, please?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, likewise. Passes. Brian, do you want to speak when we come up to 8C? Is that what your intentions are? In the citizens' comments, do you want to speak now or do you want 8C?
Would you like to speak now or wait until the item comes up on the agenda? Brian Arnett?
Yes.
Now? Okay.
Thank you. Can you turn that up, please? The consent agenda, can you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're welcome. Consent agenda number A, approval of minutes of the regular Board of Aldermen meeting of June 6, 2019. B, approval of minutes of the special Board of Aldermen meeting on June 4th, 2019. And number C, approval of the May 2019 financial statements for the Village of Salado. That's the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second has been made. Discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, likewise. Passes. Don, your turn.
Yes, sir, Mayor, members of the board, let me run through several items very quickly. First of all, status report on the wastewater project. Approximately 26% of the properties in the service area have made payment on their wastewater impact fees and are connected to or in the process of working to connect to the system. We're on pace with what we were expecting as we started this project. Cost estimates are being updated for design and construction of the wastewater line extension needed to connect the library, Brookshire Brothers, Salado, PLAZA, Holiday Inn, and adjacent properties to the wastewater system. We've got an item that will be on your first meeting in August to talk about how to proceed potentially on those items. Final wastewater connection of the Stagecoach property to the new wastewater system will be complete. Just so you know, it will not look anything like it looked before. If you get a chance to go down and look at it by the end of next week. We actually have fabricated a cap for that wet well to the point where no one can get into it. There will be a fencing around it itself. It has a generator behind it. It meets TCEQ requirements. But we should be done with that and off the property as far as wastewater and the Stagecoach is concerned next week. The projected date for connection to Salado ISD properties, as you know, is August 14th. And we have 2 additional tap locations that will be added next week on Main Street. One for the Means property, and the other one will be over on Pace Park Road to try to help make it a little bit easier for the folks to connect on the south side of Pace Park Road, closest to the creek. And we'll bring you obviously a change orders and deal with the cost, and those costs will be very minimal as far as the extension of those lines. Status report on sales tax collections. The June 2019 sales tax check is in. That, of course, representing 2019 sales. It totals some $39,557. The June 2019 was 21% higher than the June 2018 check. June 2019 check, the largest June check in the history of this city. The fiscal year to date, sales tax collections total some $394,000, almost $395,000, up about 14% from the same time last year. Fiscal year to date, sales tax collections represent 97% of the fiscal year 2019 sales tax revenue budget at the 75% mark in the fiscal year. A quick note and reminder about sales tax. It is not a fair comparison when you compare your sales tax numbers to other communities. Every community differs. Every community has different generators. You get concerned when you don't see same type of increases other communities have. There's a lot behind those numbers that I think people sometimes don't like to point out or don't know that goes behind those numbers. So we've seen a consistent trend even during the construction of the interstate. We actually saw some sales tax growth, believe it or not, during that difficult time for the community. Obviously, the growth is great, but now we're happy with that. Hopefully, it will continue. Status report on the Salado ISD SRO program, the Student Resource Officer program. We alluded to this in some of the annexation discussions. One of the interests of the school district as we annex their properties into this community is that they're interested in entering into a partnership with our police department, and that partnership would place a police officer on campuses in the Salado ISD. Right now, the program is being developed with the idea that we would have one officer who would rove among the campuses, probably spend most of their time at the high school and maybe headquarter out of the high school. That officer would actually be a Salado police officer who is hired as a Salado police officer. When they're not doing school duties, they would be a Salado police patrol officer. The cost of this officer would be shared by the school district. We're working that out. We met today with Superintendent Novotny and the chief to talk about how we want to divide those costs and how we want to reach an agreement. We're pretty close, I think, just looking at from the initial meeting as far as trying to nail down some of the talking points and the key action points in the agreement. So our plan to bring that agreement to you guys in July. We're probably going to be posting for this position in the next couple of days so we can get the process started. Obviously, we won't hire until the agreement basically is in place and we go from there. But I think it's a great partnership. I think it's something that is going to enhance school security for students as well as members of the faculty. And I think it's going to be a positive for this community and also help supplement manpower on the police department's force right now. Status report on the Salado Art and Cultural District. The Texas Commission on the Arts, the TCA, as you know, has approved just recently the previously submitted request that the village assume management responsibility for the Salado Art and Cultural District. So we're starting to gear up to do that over the last couple of days. The district steering committee, which in the past has been the management piece, will serve a role as an advisory board, and we'll work very closely with them. Quite frankly, follow their lead in most cases. A grant application seeking some $32,000 from the commission has been submitted to help fund boundary and wayfinding signage, along with billboard and print advertising to encourage visitation to the district. It's a 50-50 matching grant, so the total cost of the project we're looking at is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $64,000. If the grant's awarded, the village would match the grant with dollars from the HOT fund in large part, and also maybe some money from the general fund. This TCA grant funding is one of the big pluses of being named as a cultural district. There's quite a bit of money available. Up to $250,000 in the grant program is available for award in this situation. So next year, we hope to submit something maybe a little bit greater to accomplish more for the district. I think it's an exciting time, and we're looking forward to getting into the swing of helping out with the management of that district. Staff's report on the Main Street improvements. That's not Mail Street improvements, the Main Street improvements. Capital excavation is nearing completion on the installation of the first leg of storm sewer pipe in front of the Stagecoach property. Work is expected to begin next week on the installation of storm sewer and sidewalks on the north side of Salado Creek to Thomas Arnold. The sewer connection efforts are being coordinated with TxDOT so as to avoid any type of conflicts with construction. And just a reminder to folks, and that is the Salado Police Department will be working traffic enforcement on an ongoing basis on Main Street. If you've not been written a ticket in the construction zone, it's not a pleasant experience, and it's not a cheap experience. So we ask people to please follow the speed, keep your speeds down, and keep your eye out for the workers as they proceed. One other quick note to point out, and that is we received an invitation yesterday from the school district. They're going to be breaking ground officially on the new school next week, I believe Wednesday at 5. Members of the community, everyone is invited to attend, and they've extended a special invitation, Mayor, to you and members of the board to attend this event. I think it's a great community event, and hopefully it'll only be 97 degrees instead of 100 degrees. Fingers are crossed on that. That's all I got, Mayor.
Thank you. And I certainly hope that members of the Alderman board will come and be a part of that. And whatever we have to do, we'll do it all together as a team. So I've written it down in my book, so I will be there. Any questions to Don, please?
Yeah, Don, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned 14% sales tax increase so far. What's the biggest contributor to that? Is it retail, alcohol?
It's retail.
Retail is the biggest driver?
And there, normally when you see bumps of this amount, you see significant bumps in certain months. You go in and you dig into the numbers and you see it's an audit correction. It's where they completed an audit, found out somebody didn't report what they should have, and you get the proceeds from that. In this situation, the last 2 months, the jumps we've seen have been solid increases as a result of retail.
Yes.
Yes. And your alcohol, you speak of alcohol, just so you know, your alcohol tax is up too considerably in the last 12 months.
Thank you.
Other questions to Don, please? Don, it's very exciting news about the Salado Resource Officer Program. That is extremely good. And I'm really glad we're going to really put some emphasis in protecting our children and youth in the days to come.
Mayor, can I jump in and add one other quick thing?
Sure.
I've got a note that I want to add in. And that is, we are in the process of an administrative review on the plat submission, the construction plat submission for Sanctuary. And we're going to be posting the development agreement online so people understand what it says. We've received a number of questions about can they do this, can they do that? And I think the agreement speaks for itself from that standpoint. Just so you know, the agreement has some extremely low minimum lot size requirements from that standpoint, to the tune of extremely low, to help promote potential townhomes and those type of things in certain parts of the development. Right now, we're not seeing those in this initial construction plat, but we'll be posting that, and when we get the plat report, when we release it in the public city, we most definitely will get it out there and post it online so people can see it.
Very well.
Don, how does our ordinance for subdivision development play in with the sanctuary?
Well, the sanctuary agreement was a negotiated development agreement, and there are probably 15 pages worth of modifications to our ordinance requirements in that agreement that we agreed to waivers and variances on and things along those lines. Example being, there are not cul-de-sac requirements like you would normally see in a typical subdivision that comes in. The block lengths requirements are different. Signage requirements are different. Sidewalk requirements are different. Lot size requirements are different. It calls for some very specific requirements as far as the way homes should look and how tall homes should look. And it has some specific impervious cover requirements for the entire development, which is going to be kind of tricky to figure out because we have phase one of a residential piece, and there's an overall impervious cover requirement in that development agreement that contemplates looking at commercial as well as residential and making sure that they meet. So we'll work through that with the developer from that standpoint. But the other thing we're doing, just so you know, as we speak, is we're going through the full development agreement and looking for any milestone marks just to make sure everything has been met by them up to this point to make sure that they have not misstepped and there's a problem. But Obviously, we're working diligently.
Well, they have a credibility problem with the board, because none of the times that they have said that they were going to provide something have they actually produced a product. And so, it's my opinion that with their failure and there's no trust in that process whatsoever at this time. And and what you're telling me, if I understand this right, is that our subdivision ordinance will not be a player out there, and we have really no clout in reviewing or making their subdivision conform with anything that is the vision of Salado at this time.
They created a vision with their concept plan, and having not been here during the public process, I can attest to what was said, what wasn't, what was presented, what wasn't. But it is a very typical development agreement that you see. And what they do is they go in and they pull out certain, ears of corn that stand in the way of dinner and that don't fit the vision. And so that's what you see. I mean, but there will be some parts of the ordinance that will come into play. For example, drainage. And floodplain requirements and things along those lines. It appears that those are all going to be applicable. But when you get into some of the specifics, give an example. The entrance into this first phase is a parkway concept coming into Royal Street at that 90 degree, which is kind of not what you normally would do. And that's not a critical statement, but that's just kind of the way it is. And it's something we agreed to, I guess, in the development room as far as the layout and the concept. They have the ability to come in and seek modification of the concept plan, and when they do that, if they have exceeded a certain percentage of that variation, they have the ability to come back, and you have the ability to require them to come back to the board to modify the concept plan, at which times that potentially opens the wound, and you have the ability to go back in and see what you got. But at this stage of the game, it's a pretty specific, detailed agreement that exists.
But there is some hope that since they haven't upheld their side of the bargain, then we have some wiggle room to get in there and make some kind of requirements that would be more benefiting of this Salado.
We're going to check the milestone compliance, and that's what we're in the process of doing right now, just to make sure, because it has been so long since this came up.
Okay.
And also, just another quick additional mark. The gateway signs.
Oh, I wanted to ask about that. I've got my speech ready for that.
Go ahead and ask.
Okay. We're managing a $4 million TxDOT impact project to the Main Street. We're managing a sewage system bond. My number one complaint I get from people is that the first impression that they have when they drive into Salado is our sign, which is not lit, and it is usually overgrown, and it's not really maintained. And I know that I've been all over you about this, and you say it's really, we've done basically as much as we can do. And the committee or the group that got together to fund this has had funds dry up. Is that pretty much where we're at right now to finish the lighting and anything else that needs to make it more attractive?
It's not a city project. And I'm going to start off my comments with that. It is a city project in the fact that it's in Salado, and that we care about it, and we want it to be a winner, and we want it to be what it's intended to be. But the driving behind it is not the city. The funding behind it is not the city. It has been kind of a community-driven project, which is great, and quite frankly, shows how cool Salado is on that end of it. This city has contributed almost $20,000 to that project. If you recall, about a year ago, you contributed over $13,000, and just recently we discovered when we went back through some previous invoices, an invoice for several $1,000s, just like $6,000, $7,000, that the city contributed some 4 or 5 years ago to the project to light the signs, and that lighting effort was a failure. We were asked the other day, our concern is to get it done. I'm tired of hearing people on the street saying, why aren't you getting it lighted? We're doing what we can. It's not our project. If it was our project, this thing would be lighted. And I'm serious when I say that. We got a contractor to submit a bid to lay the electrical line to the solar panels, which is a revised solar design that they've come up with. And the first comment we got when we gave them the quote was, that's too much money. We need to go get a couple of others. And that's fine. Again, it's not our project. But we've gotten the TxDOT approval. We've gotten them a quote of a contractor to get them to where they need to be from an electrical standpoint, and we've given them $20,000. And I don't know much, I want to help, but I guess my point would be this, and that is, if they want it lighted, and you want it lighted, tell me and I'll get it lighted. But at this stage of the game, it really is not in our wheelhouse.
Well, about a year ago, I sat in, I was elected to sit on this board. And I think it's something about this chair because Michael McDougal, that was the first thing that he was hollering about, was that sign. And here we are 14 months later, and it's still, sort of a joke in the community about that. And they're laying it right at our feet that we can't, manage a sign, much less, sophisticated projects. So what's the way ahead on this?
I think the way ahead is this. If you want it lighted, tell me you want it lighted. We'll bring you guys a budget amendment, and we'll get the thing lighted. And quite frankly, it can get lighted very quickly. They have the new parts they need, supposedly, and they just need to get the conduit laid. TxDOT has told them how to lay the conduit, and we'll move forward and get it done. I don't want to come off in any way critical of those that are behind it, because they've done an awful lot. They've raised a lot of money. They've busted their backs out of this thing, and they've done a beautiful job of designing it. But we need closure on this project. We really do need closure, and it's not that hard to get to the point of closure. It's about $4,500 to get the conduit and everything laid, and then they've got, I think, $4,000 worth of electric or solar stuff that they just recently bought to replace the stuff that was bought originally that didn't work. So they're at a point, and my fear on this project is now that they realize the costs are involved, they're going to be out on the street asking for more money, and it's going to drag on. And if you tell me I'll find the money in the budget and we'll get it done.
Don, who is
Ready for
they?
it. Let's take the bull by the horns and get that thing lit, and let's have a really good first impression of Salado as you drive in.
The landscaping piece, we're about to secure a contractor to deal with all of the TxDOT landscaping. That's our obligation to do. We have money that we allocated in the budget this year, so we'll have a contractor doing that. But the concern is the lighting piece, and we've got to get it lit. And TxDOT is not going to help you, and I'm not criticizing TxDOT, but they're not going to help you. And their comment is, you wanted it.
So I have some kind of contribute. So this is one of the last things that I voted against before I was off the last time. And the reason why is because we hadn't had a budget. We don't know what they did with our $20,000, and us told them until they could tell us what they did with our last money. We didn't need to spend $20,000 more, and now here we are. We're $20,000 more in. Still haven't seen where our money went. Does anybody have a budget? That's all I want to see is where have they spent our money?
14 months later.
It's ridiculous for us to be sitting up here having this conversation, not knowing where our money went, the 20 plus whatever that we've put in there. And Merle sat up there, and I'll call him out right now. Because he called me every name in the book when I was sitting in this position last time about not wanting to support the project. Because you're right, it's not a village project, and they've never wanted anything from us but money. They don't want our opinions. They don't want anything. They sure don't want to supply a budget. But they want our money.
Yeah, my concern is that I'm hearing that that all payments might not have been made to the artist. And
That's not okay.
That those type of things are just, part of me says, let's just get it done.
I'm all. Don, who is they? You keep referring to they.
Merle is who we're dealing with. Merle and Joe's the artist behind it. And it has been kind of the technical mind behind the deal, and they've met with us on several occasions. But Merle, it's kind of been Merle's lead.
Okay, and
Logistically, who's going to manage the project after it's completed? Who replaces the first light bulb that goes out?
Very good question.
Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be Earl? Is it going to be?
Our only obligation on that gateway sign right now is keeping the weeds trimmed down inside.
We get it lit, I can tell you the action's going to be moving forward because.
Hey, Don, would it be prudent at the next Alderman meeting to have Merle up at the podium and tell us what's going on?
I just want to see a budget. I don't want to hear about a budget. I want to see a budget.
I think what we want to avoid is a conflict. I think what we want to do is get the job done. And maybe there would be some benefit to Mayor, you and me, or you having somebody, Alderman Mayor Pro Tem or Alderman Coggan, Alderman Rodney, whoever, to maybe sit down with Merle and talk to him about closure.
Okay. Mike, do you will?
Me?
You and me. You
Started it.
Are you willing?
Yes.
Okay, you and me.
Thanks, Don. I think you're doing a good job. I know I'm beating you up, but you're just the workhorse that's doing all the work, so I appreciate it.
I get it lighted.
Don, I want to ask one other question. Has Austin or Waco TxDOT talked with you any?
Yeah, and they've approved. They've approved everything. They've approved the plan for lighting it. They've given the permission for that. They've looked at everything. It's not a TxDOT issue.
Have they told you that TxDOT told me that the contractor didn't put the right solar panels in there? And that they were going to contact the people, the contractor, and see if he would come back and do it? And the person who told me that was Hopman and Terry McCoy. Terry McCoy is the state leading engineer.
Panels were put in actually by a private contractor working with Merle
Right.
and Joe. And they have been out of it. It's been a hands-free deal for them. And, you know, quite frankly, the whole problem would have been resolved if TxDOT put conduit in the ground when they did the interstate widening, when you could pull the wire, live hard wire, and not rely on solar and lighted those things like a street sign. It didn't happen. And water under the bridge. But it's not a TxDOT issue at this stage of the beginning. And I don't think it's fair, quite frankly, to go back on TxDOT.
Okay. Any other comments, please?
Is there anybody out here in the audience seen the budget on this, or as that we're putting this together, might shed some light on this? And that's supposed to be funny.
No, I haven't seen the budget, but we got $90,000 to do entryway from TxDOT. Where's that?
That $90,000 cannot be spent on that kind of physical structure. They have limitations on that. Money's supposed to be spent on landscape.
I'm gonna throw Kurt Hearn under the bus, however, he has the budget.
I would just want to caution us that if we get involved in this and take the project over, that we ensure there are no liens against the project, that there's not any money owed to anyone so far on the project before we step in and take over. I mean, I'm not against taking it over. I'd like to see it done myself, but I certainly don't want to put us in a liable situation, have to pay other bills on top of connecting.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Don, I am going to go to Randy Hopman and Terry McCoy, and I'm going to talk to them. I'll talk to them nicely. And more than likely, they're going to send it down to Waco and say, Waco, take care of it. Waco TxDOT. But I will talk to them this week and see if I can get some answer out of them, and we will find out.
Their answer, just so you know, their answer is going to be, they have issued the permit for the light. They're done. They have, there was a delay on their part in getting that approved, and they have since done it, and they agreed to what we asked.
Okay.
It's a matter of getting,
And I'm done with my tantrum.
yes.
Okay, then, well, that's
So do
that's
you
where
want to set up a
we're,
meeting?
yes. But let me,
Like you and me?
yes,
Okay.
but let us, and the Mayor Pro Tem should be a part of it too.
Okay.
Let me just think for a moment, Don. Okay. Yeah, I'll set up the meeting and I will send either an email or I will call tomorrow morning
Let's talk before we do that.
to Randy Hopman or to Terry McCoy. Okay.
Let's talk before we do that.
Anything else? Any other questions? That was good discussion. Any other questions, please? Okay, number 5. Public hearing and possible action. Hold a public hearing and consider approval of an ordinance approving an application for a conditional use permit submitted by Rosemary, oh, I hope I don't mispronounce this, CALCESE, for a fitness center on property zoned local retail LR located at 113 Salado Plaza Drive in Salado, Bell County, Texas, and providing for findings of fact, amendment of the zoning district map, repealer, severability, effective date, proper notice, and meeting. Don?
Don't worry about mispronouncing the name because she's not here, because she has withdrawn this application. So as such, you all simply need to take action accepting the withdrawal.
I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve withdrawal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? Question has been called. If you're for it, raise your hand. If you're opposed, likewise. Passes. Okay. All right, number 6. Consider approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, to annex under Chapter 43 of the Texas Local Government Code, the Williams Road right-of-way from West Village Road to FM 2484, owned by Bell County, as further described in Exhibit A in Bell County, Texas, lying adjacent and contiguous to the present corporate limits of the Village of Salado and the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction in Bell County into the incorporated municipal boundaries of the Village of Salado, Texas, including the following findings of fact, effective date, repealer, severability, and proper notice and meeting. Don?
Yes, sir, Mayor, this is the first of the annexation ordinances. This one particularly relates to the annexation of the right-of-way known as Williams Road, basically from West Village all the way to 2484. You approved it on first reading at your last meeting. Staff's recommendation is approval on second.
Questions to Don, please. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve on second reading.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, please.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, likewise. Passes. B, consider approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, to annex under Chapter 43 of the Texas Local Government Code, the Salado School Road right-of-way from West Village Road to Thomas Arnold Road, portions of which are owned by Bell County and the Salado Independent School District. Excuse me. As further described in Exhibit A in Bell County, Texas, lying adjacent and contiguous to the present corporate limits of the Village of Salado and the village extraterritorial jurisdiction in Bell County, and to the incorporated municipal boundaries of the Village of Salado, Texas, including the following findings of fact, effective date, repealer, severability, and proper notice and meetings. Don?
Mayor, members of the board, this is your second annexation ordinance in the series tonight. This particular ordinance relates to the annexation of what is commonly known as Salado School Road, as you pointed out. Some of that property is owned by Bell County, some of that property is owned actually by the Salado ISD, but there's a restricted easement that serves as Salado School Road. It's that stretch of Salado School Road that runs from West Village Road all the way to Thomas Arnold. And staff's recommendation is approval on second and final reading.
Questions to Don, please.
Hey, Don, I have a question for you. This encompasses both sides of the road, is that correct?
Yes, sir, the entire right of way.
The residential's also?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The road, the right of way, not the residential properties, but the right of way, which means the asphalt and the shoulders.
Any other questions, please? If there are not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion has been made to approve this ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
Second has been called. Discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, likewise, passes. C, consider approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, to voluntarily annex under Chapter 43 of the Texas Local Government Code, property owned by the Salado Independent School District on Williams Road as further described in Exhibits A and B in Bell County, Texas, lying adjacent and contiguous to the present corporate limits of the Village of Salado and the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction in Bell County, into the incorporated municipal boundaries of the Village of Salado, Texas, including the following findings of fact: effective date, repealer, severability, and proper notice and meeting. Don?
Yes, sir. Mayor, members of the board, ordinance 3 is a series of annexation ordinances. This particular ordinance brings into the village limits the property that is known as the Salado High School property and also the new school property that you're going to be going to the groundbreaking on next week. Staff recommends approval on second and final reading.
Questions to Don, please. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve on second reading.
Is there a second? The motion has been made and seconded. Discussion. Question has been called. All in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed, likewise, passes. Number D. Consider approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, to voluntarily annex under Chapter 43 of the Texas Local Government Code, property owned by Salado Independent School District on Salado School Road and Thomas Arnold Road, as further described in Exhibits A and B in Bell County, Texas, lying adjacent and contiguous to the present corporate limits of the Village of Salado and the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction in Bell County, into the incorporated municipal boundaries of the Village of Salado, Texas, including the following findings of fact: effective date, repealer, severability, proper notice, and meeting. Questions to Don, please. Don, is there anything you'd like to say to this?
No, this is actually the final in the annexation ordinances. This particular ordinance brings in all of the Salado ISD schools and property located on Salado School Road and Thomas Arnold Road. And staff recommends approval of the second and final reading of this ordinance.
Now, a question to Don, if you have any from what he just said. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Passes.
Mayor, can I take a moment real quickly before we progress in the agenda and thank the Salado ISD for everything they did in this process. It's been a long time coming, and I will tell you, Dr. Novotny, members of his school board, both current and former members of the school board, have worked hard and diligently on this issue, and I will tell you, welcome to Salado. Truly welcome to Salado, and thank you for all of your efforts.
And Michael, yes. Michael, it is so good to hear that Salado schools are part of Salado and not Belton and Killeen. I thank you very much for that. Would you like to speak, please?
Just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor and Aldermen and Don, you were good to work with, and look forward to seeing your partner with you. So thank you. Look forward to being a part of the village.
Should we clap again?
Michael, any money that you get in from any grants that we work with you, we will certainly take half of it. Thank you. Workshop number 7. A, discuss and consider issues relating to assessment and collection of impact fees for the Village of Salado wastewater system. Don?
Mayor, let me kind of set the stage for this discussion, and I've also asked Grady Reed, who is our rate consultant, to come in and maybe brief, since we have several new members of the board, maybe brief them on impact fees and how they came about. Very quickly, just a few quick facts to kind of lay the predicate. The initial customer base is some 130 properties thereabouts in the downtown area and on the west side on West Willis Road. The initial projections showed that the impact fees that were approved by this board, following a very public process, with public input, public hearings and such, we're going to generate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $975,000. The payment process to date has been initiated on approximately $257,000 of those impact fees. Most of the property owners are opting obviously for the 4-year payment plan. However, many have come in and actually paid the full amount to start. We have almost 70% of the properties in the initial customer base who are actually on the lower end of the scale, and quite frankly at the bottom end of the scale when you look at the impact fees. They're assigned 1 LUE or a little bit above 1 LUE, but certainly under 2. And the largest impact fee to be paid by a property in this community is not $100,000. It's not $200,000, but it is $59,000. There's a very large business, which, by the way, has stepped up to the plate and has already entered into a payment plan and is starting to pay their impact fees. And they're connected to the system. So I think there's a lot of misinformation out there on the street right now about the volume and the size of these things. But at the end of the day, is it cheap? No. But again, the purpose of those fees, as we've all talked about, is really to try to recognize and recover the cost of the impact of that particular property on the wastewater system. With that said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to get Grady to come up. Grady's with HDR, and they were the right consultant to come forward. This is Grady Reed for those of you new members who don't know him. And we've asked him to kind of give you kind of a brief history on how we got to where we are today and the purpose of impact fees and what the thought process was in the development and approval of these. So, Grady?
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Aldermen. As Don said, my name is Grady Reed. I'm with HDR Engineering, and we were the consultant that was hired to develop both the impact fees and to guide the city through that effort, as well as guide the city through the rate setting effort on the wastewater system. So a little bit of background on impact fees. Impact fees are, for those of y'all that don't know, they're statutorily contained in Chapter 395 of the Texas Local Government Code. They are designed to be a one-time upfront payment levied on new development that is designed to recoup a portion of the cost of developing the capacity within, in this case, a wastewater system to serve that development. So let me talk about new development, because for most utilities, new development is what you would normally consider to be new development. Someone builds a new house, someone builds a new shopping center. That's clearly new development that would be tying into an existing system. That is not the present case, certainly in the village. The village's new development is existing homes, existing businesses that are tying into a brand new system. So even though the homes and the businesses are there, they are new customers onto a system, and therefore they can be levied an impact fee to help pay for that system. We went through this process, and the way that impact fees are normally developed. I won't go into the whole detail of it, but you normally take your construction costs for the village. It was relatively straightforward. You take the construction cost of the project, which is about $10 million, and you would divide that by the total number of LUEs, which is a living unit equivalent, which is kind of what we consider to be one standard single-family home. And that gives you a cost per LUE that would be levied against that new development. We do have to go through a process and determine a rate credit against that fee, because as customers connect to the system, they're not only paying for that system impact fees, but they will pay a portion of that system through their wastewater rates as well. And we want to make sure that they're not double paying for the system. So we go through, we credit out what we expect for them to pay through their rates, and that comes up with a maximum allowable impact fee. The maximum allowable case was about $5,500. As we went through the process, the Board of Aldermen eventually voted to levy an effective impact fee of $37.50 per LUE. So that's kind of the history behind the impact fees, and those tie in directly to the rates and how we want to pay for this system. Those impact fees, we're expecting to bring in about $975,000 through impact fees from people connecting to the wastewater system. You have three buckets of revenue, if you will, to pay for this system. The system's being built, the system has to be paid for. The first bucket is the wastewater rates, those rates that will be charged directly to the customers of the system based upon based upon their usage. The second bucket is the impact fees. Again, those are a one-time payment, or in this case, those payments may be spread out over 4 years, but they're only going to be levied one time against that property. If the property is sold, there is no more impact fee. Once the impact fee has been paid for that property, it's been paid. It never has to be paid again. That's your second bucket. So that's the $975,000 that we've assumed is going to come in from impact fees. The third bucket of money that we have is property taxes. In most cases, and large systems, if you go to City of Austin or any large system, most utilities are supported strictly from utility rate revenue and impact fees. But in small systems, like you have right now with your developing wastewater system, it is not uncommon to use property tax revenues to pay for a portion of that system. So that's our third bucket that we have. The system is expected to cost right about $1 million a year in operations and maintenance cost. The bulk of that is debt service. About $750,000 or so of that is payments towards the debt. And the remaining portion, about $250,000 or so, is actual operations and maintenance of the system itself. From each one of those pieces of revenues, we assume that the system is going to bring in about $225,000 per year, at least initially, from the utility rates. We tried to set the rates so that they were fair and not overly, I don't want to use the term, and not overly burdensome to customers. Quite honestly, if we were to pay for this system just through utility rates and we weren't going to consider impact fees or property tax revenue, we never really did that scenario, but the average wastewater customer's monthly bill would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of $600 or $700 a month. And that obviously wasn't feasible. That's why we're using these other sources of revenue to balance that out. So we have about $225,000 a year coming in from just those customers that are connected to the wastewater system through their wastewater rates that the city village has approved and adopted. We have taken the impact fee money, the $975,000 that's coming in, and we've spread that out over a period of about 5 or 6 years. So we're generally counting on about $175,000 per year of impact fee money going in to offset the $1 million of annual operation and maintenance cost of the system. So that leaves us with about $650,000 that is being paid for through property tax revenue. And that property taxes, that's coming in from all the citizens of the village, not just those who are connected to the wastewater system. So that's kind of where we are at this point. Making any changes to any of those buckets, if you pull money from one, you're going to have to make it up from somewhere else. And so that was the big discussion that we had when we were going through the rate setting process is how do we want to try to balance those as best we can, trying to place more of the burden of the cost of the system, if we could, onto those that are actually directly benefiting from it or benefiting from it the most, which is the customers that are tied onto the system, while still understanding and realizing that the village as a whole will receive some benefit from having this system, even though you may not be directly connected to it. So at this point, everyone is paying something through their property taxes, but those that are connected directly to the system are paying a greater share, a greater burden of the cost.
The rates were set, in simple terms, the rates were set to basically cover the nut of the operation of the plant, with the understanding that the tax revenue pot and the impact fee pot would go towards debt service reduction for the taxpayer. Is $975,000 a huge savings on the taxes? No, but it's movement downward. as opposed to upward, which I think is what people have been asking for, from what we talked about in that hearing process. It's the other thing that's real important to understand that he points out is the fact that whatever you do with these rates has to be fair. And it has to be a test that goes from top to bottom equal. Translation, what you do to the guy up top, you need to do to the guy down below. You can't do something down below that you go do up top. It needs to be fair across the board from that standpoint. That's the challenge of setting these fees, as we talked about, was finding level of tolerance. It's not cheap, but also $10 million for a wastewater system that's going to serve a limited number of customers is never cheap.
I have a question. So math isn't my thing, so I need you to kind of help me here. When we, as a village, initially voted for the sewer system, we had voted for X number of dollars, and that's what the sewer system was going to cost, and our taxes were going to be this number. Where does that impact fee thing, the need for that, come from? Because I was thinking that when you voted on it and we had a number, and that's what people were paying for taxes, there wasn't any extra need for additional money, that those impact fees were actually going to be used to put in new infrastructure and things like that. It wasn't actually retiring. It wasn't needed to retire the debt. It might help us retire the debt, but it was necessary.
And that's not the sole reason it's there. It's there, first and foremost, it's there to try to recover true impact of a property's on a system. But number one. Number two, it's there to help generate revenue, to help for new developments coming into the community in the future to begin to pay for itself, so the taxpayers aren't having to bear the brunt of that extension. And the other allowable use is debt service reduction, which this board talked about at length, and it seemed to feel that that was a priority at this point from what they were hearing.
But what I was hearing is that if we did away with the impact fees, people were going to pay $600 a month for their sewer. Is that not what you said earlier? Like the bill would go up by that much if we were to eliminate impact fees.
No, that was never really considered. All I was saying is that in this system, you can't rely solely on revenue from rates, because the rates would be, they would not be feasible.
Correct, but we've got the taxes. People are being taxed at their businesses and their homes. That's paying off the system. And then whatever is generating, like people are paying monthly for the service, that's what's taking care of the actual like maintenance and running the system.
Yes. So if, for example, if you were to say, well, we don't want to use any of the impact fee revenue to pay debt service, we want to take that impact fee revenue and we want to hold on to it. We want to use it for a plant expansion or a system expansion down the road. You can do that. That's fine. That $175,000 a year that we're assuming is going to come from the impact fees to pay debt service would just have to be made up through additional property tax revenue. It's those two at this point, since the rates are set, are basically a dollar for dollar trade-off. For every dollar of impact fee revenue that we don't spend to offset the O&M cost, there's an additional dollar that has to come from property tax revenue. So it's just
when it's set up to break even, we're not, but what you're saying is it's set up to break even right now. We're not going to have any room to expand unless we have these impact fees.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it's how you want to prioritize the expenditure of the impact. If you want to direct that towards debt service, if you want to share it, maybe what you say is, and I think what he's saying is, maybe you say instead of 175,000, you're going to throw 86,000 towards debt service reduction, and set 86,000 aside for maybe plant expansion in the future. You can do that, but what he's saying is when you take that 86 away from the debt service equation, it's going to go back on the tax rate, which means they're not going to see as much of a potential decrease. And I caution you, the decrease is not going to be significant at this level of revenue coming in, but it's going to go down. I mean, the rate will go down. It should go down.
Maybe.
The 900 and let's just say it's $975,000. So if we put that all to debt service, then I should expect to see, and every other person in here should expect to see a 10% decrease in their property tax. Why would they not see that? Because I'll tell you right now, nobody in this room had a clue what an LUE was when the bond was passed. So why isn't all that money going, if it's going to debt service, then I should see a lowering of the tax rate.
That's
And
I know that's what we're talking about.
But are we?
I'm not in favor of the LUEs at all. I want them gone. Period. That's me. I want the debt restructured. I want our FA here telling us what we can do to extend out the debt and take the property tax off the people and the businesses, because the people and the businesses are getting it laid to them 3 different ways. And yet we're talking about how we're supposed to be supporting our businesses. This is in no way supporting our businesses. It's nothing but a money grab. That's all it is.
John, what is your opinion of that?
It is a board decision.
I know that, but what is your opinion of what we just said? Give us some guidance.
My guidance is it's a board decision, and we talked about that when we set the impact fees up, whether you want to move forward with it and move in that direction. And it is a situation that if you do away with them, what you're saying is we're going to dump it all back on the taxpayer, and then that's fine, and that's your prerogative, and then that's y'all's decision. I will tell you that the way it's situated today is very difficult to go in and restructure from a revenue perspective. We've had that discussion with our FA. It was looked at when the debt was originally issued. And you're well into your debt service schedule at this stage of the game. But whether you want the impact fees or not, it's clearly your call. It is an expensive proposition. There is no question about that. I would disagree with Rodney in this sense, and we see eye to eye on a lot of things, but I'll tell you, I don't know that it's a money grab per se. It's just a decision that was made by this board to move in the direction of trying to look at some debt service reduction and potentially look at some potential assistance in funding future expansion as it grows. You've got some significant money that's going to be coming in the next 12 months, I think, from some development, if that development comes true. Every one of those homes in Sanctuary will be paying an LUE fee. Every one of those homes in Bear subdivision coming in will be paying an LUE fee. You know, that is literally ground up new development as opposed to existing. And I think that's part of the challenge in this equation that we talked about when we set these rates, and that's collecting an LUE from an existing business and calling that existing business a new business. That's, I think, a difficult thing for a lot of people to understand too. And we do have the FA running. We do have the FA scheduled to come talk to you guys about that on the next workshop.
Yeah, tell her bring her pencil.
So,
the reason I call it a money grab is because let's take the business owner on Main Street who paid the property tax.
Let's take the taxpayer out
No,
there.
let's take, I'll get to them.
Taxpayers sitting out there and they're not getting anything out of this deal. And,
I'll get to
I
them
just
in a
don't get
minute,
it.
but right now, let's take the business who paid a property tax to build the system that you're forcing them to pay an LUE to hook into. Is that right?
Is it right for somebody that is paying taxes to get zero benefit out of it?
No, it's not.
It's not right for that either. So, you know, it's like this board has looked at before. They balanced it on all 3 shoulders. There's nobody that's getting a fair treatment in this. There's nobody that's getting what I would call a great deal on this at all. Everybody is basically paying for their fair share, including the taxpayer out there who's getting nothing out of it except for a sewage system in their community that they'll never get to use.
And the business owner has the ability to recoup some of that cost, and that's one of the reasons why the board talked about that.
And I've talked to several businesses out there that they're taking their leach field where their septic system's going, and now they have buildable property out there.
Yeah,
And that is a value that you can add into a business.
in many cases, and that is important to remember, in many cases in which communities have retrofitted wastewater systems, they have seen their businesses have flourished after that because they do have more property. They can redevelop their property. They can then, in most cases, their property values can go up substantially because they can sell those properties to other people who want to come in to develop that because there is more developable land now on that lot.
So I think the question that's coming up that I'm seeing a lot is, okay, so you said that we should be seeing homeowners or taxpayers should be seeing a 10% reduction.
Business owners will see a 10% reduction in their taxes too.
C, got it. What are the odds that we aren't going to find some other use for that money? I'm just saying, as a board, people get used to paying a tax. They get used to paying a certain tax rate. And it would be really great for us to say, we're going to come back 10% a year.
The statute is very specific in how that money can be spent. And it's kind of much like the hot tax. It can only be spent on certain things, not the promotion of business,
No.
promotion of visitation. In this situation, there are very few things that money can be spent on. And if it's this board's decision to say, we're not going to put it towards debt service reduction, if you're going to continue to charge them, and we're not going to put it towards debt service reduction, then your option's more than likely towards expansion.
Well, what Ms. Amber is saying is that here in 3 or 4 years, I think this is what you're saying, that a board containing some people on this board, like me or whoever, that's dumb enough to keep doing this, that they'll slip in and they'll say, well, we've been paying this tax rate as it is, and the board, and it's gone down, and we don't go ahead and pass that on to our taxpayer, which is not what we need to be doing.
Go ahead and make elections.
Don, let me ask you one question, please. How high could we have gone on that impact?
It was about $5,500.
The board in an attempt to lessen the impact.
Sorry, it was $5,152.
Yeah, let me ask you how low you could have gone.
Zero.
There you go.
This board had that discussion, and the board talked about whether they want to go to the max.
Now, it wasn't us that did this. There was a committee.
Right, but you had a follow-up discussion though
Right.
about whether you wanted to accept their recommendation or vary from that recommendation. And there was discussion this board had about whether they wanted to go with 3750 as recommended, whether they wanted to go low, whether they wanted to go high. And what they did was they recommended a lower rate, and they agreed to the lower rate. And they also agreed to give a 4-year interest-free payment plan to the business people to help lessen that impact. And they also worked with the county to get an agreement so there was not an immediate decommissioning requirement to lessen the initial cost burden on the person connecting. So there were several steps that were taken to try to lessen the impact, including buying for some of the customers grinder pumps that they're going to be required to have.
And 48-month no entrance loan so that they could pay their impact fees.
Okay,
But
still here,
the other conversation's been that if we don't do the impact fees, that we'll have to recoup it back through a tax or a rate. Let's talk about the tax, because you're not going to increase the taxes without voter approval.
That service, you will.
For debt service, that tax rate is not voter approved.
If you take $975,000 and you spread it across the taxpayers, we're basically asking for 55 more cents. Now, that's not all in 1 year, but that's what it's going to take to pay that. We get $17,000 for every penny. It's 55 cents that has to be added to our tax rate to retire the debt.
That's if you
Or
keep
you
the,
pay it
that's if you
twice.
keep the debt inside the general obligation side.
And I don't think you can change it to general revenue. I don't think it's possible.
We're going to have to move it to a revenue bond. If you do it in a tiered phase, you could do that. That's what we need to talk to an FA.
that is true.
Can we, so what you're saying is the way it's structured, we can't just move it out, the length out another year or two or whatever
Well,
to make up for that money.
let's go back real quick on the 55-cent deal. It's all being collected right now off the taxes. Your full impact is in place right now. You've issued both bond issues. You're paying $750,000 a year in debt service. That equates to both bond issues. The full impact of that debt service is being recovered right now from the property tax. What we're talking about is the potential of infusing $975,000 worth of income in to lessen that full burden that's in place right now. So it would reduce the tax rate. If you don't do that, then the 975 remains part of the current tax rate, and it should stay there at a level necessary to collect the debt service. Obviously, with increased value, your tax rate should go down, but at the end of the day, your taxes don't go down because it balances out.
Right. And I'm perfectly okay with levying impact fees on new construction. Perfectly fine with that. I have a really hard time with the new business, with the existing businesses. And existing businesses that were there as of the day the vote happened. Because after that, new businesses have come in since then. They knew this was coming, that you could see it on the horizon. But as of the day of the vote and before, those people existed. And they may or may not have voted for it. I mean, as general, everyone voted for it. But, you know, individually, they may have seen this writing on the wall. So that's where I'm at, is I don't want to see a single business go out of business because of these additional fees.
John, the new businesses that are coming here, how much are they going to pay?
If they were in the initial customer, if they were in the initial service area, they're paying $37.50. I think the board talked about, and again, it was a different board, but the board talked about the fact that people needed to understand that after that initial customer service area and the initial hookup period, there was the possibility that the board would come back in and revisit and look at potentially raising that fee either to the maximum or up above $37.50. Keep in mind, you can't exceed that maximum of $5,100 until you go through a study process and after a period of years. But so at this stage of the game, I'm going to tell you they're going to continue to pay $37.50. But you're going to have the ability to come in, just like you have the ability tomorrow to come in and say, I want to raise it. You can raise it.
Okay, any other
Or lower
questions?
it. You have the ability to come in and do that too.
Any other questions or any other discussion? If you've never been with us before, this is a workshop. And workshops, we take no action whatsoever. What we are doing is giving Dawn something to go on in accordance to the way each one of us speak. And each one has spoken very elegantly this morning or this afternoon, this evening. And now Don's got all the things that he's got to do, and he'll take a look at it, and then we will put this into a motion, ordinance.
You have an action item that's part of your action item agenda. If you want to provide me with direction on what to do and what to bring you related to impact fees as far as potential future action.
Okay.
So if you want to do away with it, if you want to cap it, if you want to modify it, you want to raise it, lower it, if you want to change the payback periods, the thing you need to understand is you are already you're about knee deep in the collection process. I mean, we talked about the fact that we already have payments coming in on about $275,000 out of that $975,000. So understand that whatever you do related to that impact fee is going to have to be fair across the board to those who have paid and to those who haven't paid. And you got to be careful, in that aspect, because if you start classing, you get yourself into a hole pretty quick.
Is it reimbursable at this point? Do we have the
Sure.
money to reimburse?
If you do away with them, we can reimburse them.
Okay.
John,
Be a full reimbursement of everything's been paid.
John, there has been the desire to bring an FA. And that's what I would like to do personally, to bring an FA in and to talk to the board and let our person here be with us and you be here, because each of us don't have an absolute answer to that. And I think if we try to say to you, make a motion out of it, make an ordinance, whatever you have to do that, I don't think we've got enough information on the table to make a good decision. So I would like to invite an FA to come in
Never
and talk
scheduled
us.
to come, but it will not be till August because we don't have a full board in July.
We can't do that. We cannot wait. We can't wait, because if we wait till August,
We're collecting.
We're collecting.
They're coming in on a regular basis. Today, we had 3 people come in and pay. We're averaging 3 to 4 days.
so I have a question related to the impact fee handbook that, and just kind of throwing this out there, that Tim had sent to us. I was reading this, and I am not an attorney, so I don't speak legalese, but under the part that's talking about due process, it talks about the question of whether your property rights, whatever you're putting in, if the fee was arbitrary, irrational, or capricious. Well, I think that we can argue that some of the existing is irrational. And then whenever it goes back down and it talks about the substantive due process, it says it's got a 3-pronged test. Is it rationally related to a legitimate public purpose, which is a yes, it is a legitimate public purpose. The second are the means adopted to achieve the purpose reasonably necessary. I don't think so. I don't think it passes a sniff test on that one. It's not reasonably necessary because this is just for expansion. It's not we have to have it to do it. And the third is the regulation unduly oppressive on a property owner? I think some people can argue it is. So the people that can argue that it is oppressive, then what do? Do we just not make them pay it? But everybody else is not oppressive, then they do?
Let me step back to the beginning to say, absolutely not a fair statement to indicate that these numbers were not well studied and were not well reasoned and not meet the statutory requirements. That is what we pay this consultant to do. And he has met every parameter of the law. Our lawyers have reviewed the report and are comfortable with the process and procedures that he, as well as this board, followed in the establishment of those fees. Now, whether the fees are oppressive and those type of things would be up to a court to determine in that situation.
Do we want to push that?
From a standpoint of, and that's not what we're interested in getting into either.
No.
But I guess it really is a pretty straightforward decision. And that is, you know, do you believe in the purpose? And do you believe it's too much? And do you believe the solution is to do away with it, to modify it, to do something else with it? Those are the decisions. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing says you can't do away with it. Nothing says you can't increase it or reduce it.
It really comes down to who do you want to place a greater cost burden on. Those that are directly connected to the system, i.e. through impact fees, or doing away with impact fees and placing that cost burden back to the ratepayers, the taxpayers at large.
And I stress that it's important to understand that if you choose to keep it in place and use it for debt service, which you can always modify the purpose and use of those funds, the businesses who are going to be paying more of the burden through the impact fees are going to see a decrease in their property tax, much like the homeowner would. They're going to see the benefit, probably a greater benefit in dollar value.
I think I would argue that it's not necessarily putting a greater burden on the property owners that are not seeing service, because people who are receiving service are still paying the bill. Plus, they're having to demolish their septic tanks, and they're paying the taxes. So, I mean, they still are getting a burden higher than the rest of the taxpayers that aren't seeing service.
But they're also getting the biggest benefit of it.
If they're if it is a business, you're correct. But there are people like the ones that this homeowner here, you know, the Masonic Lodge, they're not making money off of this deal. So it's really a lot harder for them to recoup that.
And we're looking to retain businesses, not have them sell their property off to somebody else and move on down the road. I mean,
Don,
that's not viable.
I'm going to call an end to this, but here is my information to you. Here's what I'm going to direct you to do. We've got a meeting on the 22nd of this month, do we not?
You have a meeting next Tuesday on goals.
Yes, I know we do. Can we add this to it or do it in place of it and then do goals another
I
time?
think it's a single topic workshop. So I think it's a single topic. You can swap the workshop and make this the workshop and see if we can get all the parties involved to be here. That's not a problem. But I wouldn't put this on the same agenda with the goals.
No, I agree. We would take the goals off and put another meeting there. But I cannot lead on words of I think, maybe. I want to know absolute truth and absolute facts about what we're trying to do. And I think we owe that to the citizens of Salado to be able to say, this is it, this is why we did it, and there's no question about it.
Your Honor, I'm willing to make a motion to sort of close this up.
We're still a workshop.
Wait till we get to that action.
Okay, I'm willing to make an action item.
Tim, I don't usually let people speak during a workshop, but you filled out a Village of Salado. Do you still want to address this?
Just want to pass that down.
Yes, sir.
Tim Fleischer. I live at 912 Cedar Park Circle. I am the Secretary of Salado Masonic Lodge. And earlier today, I emailed the impact fee handbook from the National Association of Home Builders to each of you and to Don Ferguson as well. And I'd like you to, and I handed out some pertinent information from that. And I'd really just like you to look at the impact fee as unlawful taxes section of that. Because the purpose of an impact fee is to recoup money from the impact of new development requiring investment of new money. And in a decision made by the Supreme Court of Arizona, that Supreme Court said that impact fees can be avoided by not tying onto a system. Here we are being forced to tie onto the system. I think that you may find the legality of that question. I'd also like to read from Chapter 395 of the Local Government Code, 395, Section 16. The headline is Time for Assessment and Collection of Fee. And I'm looking at paragraph C on that. And this says, this subsection applies only to impact fees after June 20th, 1987. For new development which is platted in accordance with subchapter A, chapter 212, or the subdivision or platting procedures of a political subdivision before the adoption of an impact fee, an impact fee may not be collected on any service unit for which a valid building permit is issued within 1 year of the date of adoption of the impact fees. I think if you look at Belcad, you will find that there are already on the books several subdivisions, including the O.T. Tyler subdivision of the 1870s, the original lots drawn up for the Salado in the 1860s. They are platted, they are legal, they were accepted before 1987. So all those property owners have to do is come in and turn in a building permit, which we're required to do for tying in. That would mean that you could not apply this impact fee to the existing development if it is already platted. And if you look at the legal definition of a plat, it doesn't just mean the definition of block 1, lots 2, 3, 4. It says that the legal definition includes a metes and bounds description. For example, Salado Masonic Lodge was subdivided when the property that Salado Masonic Lodge sits on today was subdivided 60 years ago when a man donated that property and deeded it to the Masonic Lodge and cut off 0.08 acres. That is, and platted it. It's on record at the county. It predates 1987. And the reason that this is put in place, this section C, is when a developer puts together a plot and a plat for their subdivision, if they've done that before you adopted the impact fees and they gave it to the city, and it's been approved before you adopted the impact fees, and then you adopt the impact fees before they begin to build on it, that affected their ability. And that affected their whole funding mechanism, because now they have to consider the impact fees for those properties. That's why there's a 1 year lead time for the building permits. And I think if you applied that to all of the properties in Salado, including Mr. Dunafer's, which is part of the O.T. Tyler subdivision I'm talking about, you'll find that the existing properties, true, they only make up $975,000. But the voters approved $10.55 million. The voters said, we will pay that for a sewer. I think if you look at section 395.13, you may find some other reasons that you can't collect the impact fee.
Mayor, I can tell you our legal has reviewed your imposition of an impact fee and found that all proper procedures were taken and it's legal.
Okay. We're going to close this one. Don, we're going to go in that direction. And each one of the aldermen, you contact, find out if we can do this on the 22nd. And we'll try to do it
You
at
want to
that
do
time.
this instead of goals?
Yes. I want to see who can be here on the 22nd. I
think
cannot,
Everybody's committed to be here on the 22nd. with
It's
goals.
the 25th, isn't it?
Yeah, it's actually next Tuesday, so it'd be 25th.
okay, the 25th then. All right. I will let you, Don, talk to each one of the aldermen and find out what is best we can do to come back and workshop this,
Sure.
whether it's the 25th or whenever it is. I would like all the aldermen to be there when we discuss this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Don, you don't have to call me. I'm in favor of just leaving it as it is.
I'll check that box.
Okay, number B. Discuss and consider issues relating to the mandatory connection requirements for the Village of Salado wastewater system. Don?
Yes, sir. Put this item on the workshop agenda, and we talked when we set the initial deadline, some 90 days, that what are we going to do if they don't get connected? And I think we all kind of talked about the fact that there was probably a very real possibility we would be at that point. But we also felt like we needed to set a deadline that gave them enough time to get some of the crowd down the road. If you set a 12-month deadline in the beginning, people will be waiting until month 11 and asking for another 3 or 4 months, and then you're a year and a half into trying to get folks connected. That said, right now, as we've talked, you've got about a quarter of the properties in the community that have started the process of tying in or are tied in, and they're coming in, quite frankly, every day at this stage of the game in pretty big numbers. So they're moving in that direction fast. I put this on the agenda because I'd like to recommend to you all that you give them another 90 days. And let them run another 90 days. They're supposed to be connected by the beginning of July. I think there's been some significant progress made by many business owners and many private property residents owners in the area to get connected. But I think it's also a situation where they're dealing with, as we knew going in, there was going to be a crowd of plumbers, with limited time. They're trying to understand it. Some of them are trying to figure it out. Some of them, quite frankly, were out of tune with the process over the last 12 months and didn't know what was coming down the pike until they started getting their letters. And so I think that the community is aware at this stage of the game of what's going on and the need to connect. And I think our feeling is we need to give them some more time. I don't know that I would give them more than 90 days. If we still have the problem after 90 days, we can certainly revisit, look at maybe another extension. But I think that we would ask you to consider the idea of maybe a 90-day extension on that deadline to give folks a little bit more breathing room.
Discussion, please, or questions?
What does that mean to the city? Let's talk about that for a second. What does that mean to the city? That means we're going to end up picking up more of that operation cost at the plant in that interim period because they're all not connected. But quite frankly, we've been doing that at Stagecoach for several years, and hopefully we're going to get out of that mode. But I think you're finding more and more people are starting to connect, which should lessen the burden on what we have to carry in that interim period.
How much approximately would that be, Don?
Well, your $12,000 is your monthly M&O over there.
So Don, what's the issue with connection? Because, we went from 24 to 26%. So in 2 weeks, we only had a 2% increase.
Yeah, I think what's happening this week, these numbers were to date when we calculated in back in production. We've been hammered the last 3 or 4 days with folks coming in. We've got people moving. I think part of the problem is they had issues locating plumbers, just because of the limit number of folks. If you've got your mail in the last few days, you've seen there are actually some plumbers now. They're actually sending direct mail people to encourage their involvement and to use them. So it's picked up pretty good from that standpoint. Keep in mind, we're talking properties versus customers. Some of these properties that are connected have multiple customers already on. Some of them are single customers. Some of them are single residences. All of your big users, I will tell you this, I feel safe in saying that really all of your big users are connected to the system at this stage of the game. And as I pointed out in my earlier presentation, the bulk of your customers at this stage of the game are minor users. They're small users. They're 1 LUE folks, which is a limited water use and limited impact.
I got a question for you, Don. So
Yeah.
if we give another 90-day extension, what percent do you think will be connected at the end of 90 days?
I mean, I think at the current pace, I think you could potentially be close to the 80% mark in another 90 days.
Okay, so it's not the big bloodshed that's being portrayed right now. People are not shooting at you and throwing knives at you. They're actually coming in line and connecting to the system.
Oh, there are always, every day there's difficult discussion. And that just comes with something new and it comes with something expensive. A dollar is a lot. And, but no, I mean, we're finding people, willing and wanting to come in. Most of the people are doing the payment plan, but and that's expected. When we offered that, we knew that was going to be the case. And the way we modeled it as such. So I don't know that there's a lynch mob out there, if that's what you're asking.
Okay. So
I think I would caution you going more than 90 days because you're still going to have a core group of people that are going to wait until that last month, much like we had this time. Our activity level has been steady in the 90 days, but in the last week, it's been considerable from that standpoint. We had 3 payments today, I believe. And at that rate we're seeing, they're coming in.
Penalties written in. I mean, do we have that addressed at this time? If people don't connect, then what?
Yes, ma'am. The ordinance that was adopted by the previous board clearly stated that if they did not connect by a deadline, that the council imposed deadline, the board imposed deadline, that the village had the authority to go in and make the connection itself and put a lien on the property for the cost incurred to connect.
Okay, any other discussion, please?
Yeah, Don, if you could bring the sewage system down my street, and I've said this before, it'd probably be a $37.50 tap fee for my house. Plus, I could get rid of a septic tank that overflowed, during the rain that we had, and I get rid of my septic inspection guy that comes out every few months and bills me for looking in a hole. Plus, I can get rid of the pumping that you have to do every once in a while. So if you can work it to where the septic system comes out, I think that would be a great deal for my house. And this is sarcasm. Don't actually go do that.
Mike was smoking before he came here.
All right.
I will say this, the one thing I would add, and that is, I don't think you should discount what we've talked about several times over the last 18 months in this process. And that is there something we can do for those folks who are not going to ever get that system? Yourself, Rodney, Frank, myself, who are not going to get it because we're not in that service area.
We're getting the taxes for it, though.
We are. And the thought process was, is there something we can do, i.e., most of us should be having our septic tanks pumped on somewhat of a regular basis. Some have never been pumped, but some are required to be pumped under their service contracts. And maybe work out some type of arrangement where the hauler could come to the plant and dump into the plant, and give that owner a break on whatever that cost is, be it discounted or free. I mean, those are the type of things to look at to see what we can do about helping folks out a little bit and maybe easing some of the pain on the non-customer.
Okay. I'm through with my discussion.
Okay, any other discussion, please? Yeah, let me ask the alderman, because you're looking for an answer. We cannot do a motion in a workshop. So let me just ask the alderman to
It's the next 2 items on the agenda here.
Okay,
Yeah.
but on this one right here, and I know they're on the agenda, but I still want the alderman to talk each one to you about the 90 days. Okay?
Well, you're at a point where the deadline's coming up in July, at the beginning of July. So you really need to take action tonight if you're going to extend it.
Okay.
So that's why it's on the agenda.
Okay. Workshop ends. The time is 7:58. All right, we're going now into discussion and possible action. Discuss and consider possible action regarding changes to the mandatory connection requirements for the Village of Salado wastewater. Don?
Yes, sir, Mayor, members of the board, this is on there for you to take action to maybe look at maybe a potential extension in the connection requirement.
Questions to Don, please. If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion, please.
Move to extend the deadline to October 1st with the stipulation that the 4-year payout goes away after that day.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, please.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Opposed, likewise. Passes.
Frank, were you in favor or against?
I was for.
Scared
I
me
like
there for a
to,
little
I like to
bit.
vote against my own motion.
Diane was lingering there for a second.
Discuss and consider possible action regarding changes in the assessment and collection of impact fees for the Village of Salado wastewater system. Don?
Mayor, this item was put on there in the event there was a desire of anybody at the board tonight to take action relating to how we collect impact fees. Or if we collect impact fees.
Questions to Don, please? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Your Honor, I move that we leave the existing collection system fees and ordinance in place and direct the city administrator to take no action except to have an FA come in and visit with us about converting this to a revenue type of funding.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Who was the second?
Discussion, please.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, likewise. Ronnie, opposed? Opposed? Okay. Passes.
Frank, your hand was up, lingered again.
4.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Number C, discuss and consider possible action regarding a request from the Salado Masonic Lodge number 296, AF and AM, to be exempt from the connection requirement for the Village of Salado wastewater system. Don?
Yes, sir. This was an item that was on the last agenda and we talked about. At that meeting, you heard, I believe, Mr. Fleischer on this particular item, and you asked that you continue this item until you had an opportunity to have the discussion with tonight, and then you want to take it up again to consider the request. So here it is.
Okay, questions to Don, please. Okay,
I have one question, Don. Okay, so going back to what we talked about last time we had this same issue and what we spoke about tonight, every time somebody requests not to attach or connect, it causes a ripple across the board and that fee's got to be made up somewhere else.
I will caution you about doing anything just for one customer. If you're going to do something, you need to consider the entire customer base and make sure you're treating the entire customer base fairly in this situation.
That's my point. We need to stay the course on the decisions we made until we come up with a better solution. Thank you.
That would be staff's recommendation too.
Brian, you wanted to speak to this?
This is my first time, so I apologize if I'm out of order.
Well then, Brian, let me just tell you, give your full name, the address where you live. You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Oh, I better talk loud and fast. Thank you. My name is Brian Arnett, and I live at 10664 Brewer Road. And I'd like to be raise a few points on the Masonic Lodge being forced to connect in for this impact fee. Whereas we are not a business and we are a nonprofit organization. We do not make money. Money that we do pull in, the little that we make, we pay our bills, we reinvest that back into the community of Salado. So we cannot, even though our septic tank is probably about the size of this podium right here, we use less than 20 gallons of water a month. And I challenge you to keep a garden alive on that on less than 20 gallons a month. If you do, you're a better gardener than I am. But the impact on us is that it's not money just coming from the Masonic Lodge. As I stated before, this is money that we collect, that we reinvest back into the community. This is money that's going to scholarships for our high school seniors. This is money that's going for the yearly awards that we give the teachers, such as the Mary Boo Lamar Award. This is money that we invest into the charitable organizations, the bicycles, the backpacks for the school. This is money you're not taking from us. This is money that you'll be taking from the community of Salado. Because again, we're not a business. We can't recoup any of this. And our property taxes, whether they go up or down, has no bearing on what we make or don't make. So again, I asked you that this oppressive burden for that small impact of less than 20 gallons a month, I asked that we not have to connect. Because if we do, we're gonna have to pay that money, and that's money that we don't make money. We do raise a few dollars, but we invest that back into the community. And I can't say that enough. It's not money you're taking from us, it's money you're taking from the community. Thank you.
The second
questions,
part,
sir?
no, they can't do that.
Sir?
This was filled
Okay.
out on this sheet of paper, and we can't speak once you make them.
Oh,
This is,
okay.
yes. We
I thought
cannot,
you had a question, I'm sorry.
no, I don't have a question, but
Oh,
we,
okay.
we can't say anything. That doesn't mean we're not going to address it down the road. It's just the way that this is written.
The way it's, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Well, you're welcome. Tim, you also filled it out. Did you want to speak on this?
Your impact fee should have an exemption process in place. It does not. There's a reason you should have an exemption process in place, and it is for exceptional properties that other properties are not like. Alderman Coggin used the term unique the last time we met. So I want to iterate some of the things that make the Salado Masonic Lodge situation different than any other property in any of the other 140 properties. First, the age of our institution is 152 years old. The age of our building is 140 years. The size of our property, we will recoup no property by tying in. The fact that we are a minimalist user, and that's being generous. We use 30 gallons of water or 20 gallons of water a month. We can't change the purpose of our property, and we have offered in our request that if we ever do sell or change our property, that we will pay the full impact fee at that future date and tie in at that future date. If we ever change the use of our property, if we ever sell our lodge building and move out in the country, we will pay before we close on the sale of that property, we will pay and connect. We will sign a legal document that says that with the Village of Salado. We're asking that we be exempted from tying in. If we're not going to be exempted from tying in, we ask that we be exempted from paying an impact fee. We ask that we be classified on the monthly billing as a minimalist user, so that we're classified either as residential or some other rate. Otherwise, we will be paying over $1.50 per gallon. Not per thousand, not per hundred, per gallon. I think those are all considerations that make Salado Masonic Lodge property meet a wise decision to make an exemption. And I pray that you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Another point of information, we did finally get an estimate to dig, and this was working with the property owner behind us, where we would connect on his pathway in, and that's over $2,600, which is pretty close to every bit of our dues. Our dues are $100 per member. Most of our members are 50-year members who are exempt or have endowments. So please consider that.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, any questions that you would like to ask Don? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion, please.
I move we exempt the Masonic Lodge from connecting to the system.
One more.
If that's a motion, you're gonna need to state public purpose for that exemption, and contemplate its impact on the customer base as a whole.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is this now when we do what you just asked us to do?
Part of the motion, you should declare what the public purpose is in the motion if you're gonna exempt them. And is it your
Oh,
intent
why?
to exempt them because they're nonprofit?
Mhm.
Is it your intent to exempt them because they're a low water user? And it's, then at that stage of the game, you probably need to consider a uniform policy to address others in the community maybe in a similar state.
Namely, churches or synagogues.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if it's a nonprofit basis, there are a lot of nonprofits in this community right now, churches, pantries, type of things. The water use issue, maybe you say people who are under 20 gallons a year, something like that, maybe look at that. It's.
So do you just need me to add that it's a nonprofit that uses less than 50 gallons a month?
Is that gonna be that's gonna be your threshold run? If that's the case, then maybe direct us to come back also with the policy and sets that up for others in the community, not just them.
Yeah, so moved.
Okay, now, Rodney, one more time. Can you give that whole motion, please?
So I'm asking for an exemption for the Masonic Lodge because they're a nonprofit and they use under 50 gallons a month, and to apply that to the other nonprofits that fall in that same category.
Okay.
And we'll bring you back a formal policy to that.
Mike, do you agree to that?
I'm seconding that, correct.
Okay. Motion's been made and it's been seconded. Now discussion.
Okay, now let's figure out what we just did.
This is a slippery slope. We have a residential homeowner saying the same thing, that there's no one currently living in the house and they have zero water usage, not a nonprofit. What do we do there? This is a slippery slope. That's why I was not in favor of just having the discussion on Tuesday about this impact fee thing, instead of kind of willy-nilly just saying let's keep the course and keep on going without actually listening to any discussion on it, because this is a problem. So who else are going to exempt? Their shop doesn't use but like 20 gallons. They're not a nonprofit, but they don't use 50 gallons a month.
And I agree with you, and I think we're setting a precedent that allows us to move forward with the next group.
Second.
So it's just nonprofits at this point.
Nonprofits that use less than 50 gallons of water a month. For a year or a month? You're saying how much you use in a year?
Well, I heard the motion was that it was for the specific user. It wasn't for a category of users. It was for the Masonic Lodge.
I don't think legally we could do that.
You have to declare the public purpose before you exempt somebody from that type of thing. So public purpose, and then when doing so, you have to be careful. You're not taking an action that can be interpreted as being discriminatory. And so what Rodney's done is Rodney has set the threshold at 50 gallons a month and a nonprofit.
Use 20 a month, right?
And he's unique.
How is this not discriminatory? You're setting us up for a lawsuit, is what you're setting us up for. I mean, we need a lawyer here.
Thank you, Amber.
This is, y'all are setting us up for disaster.
I agree, 100%.
This is crazy.
Okay, guys. Other discussion, please. Do I hear the call for the question?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed likewise. Fails.
We need a workshop.
Yes, we do need a workshop.
So, I texted about see if we can get folks here for Tuesday.
Okay.
If not,
It doesn't matter now because we've already voted on it, but
we voted down, so the motion died.
No, I mean the impacting thing.
We need to go to a workshop at another date, and we need to talk about this. It is spelled now, but to hear the whole thing out. All right, number C, discuss and consider possible action regarding a request from the Salado Masonic Lodge. I just know that, I just read it. D, discuss and consider possible action regarding plans for Independence Day fireworks display on July 6, 2019 in Salado, Texas. Don?
Yes, sir. As you know, it's that time of the year again. We're just a few days away, and our ordinance requires approval of fireworks discharge in the community, and so that is here for your annual approval. Mr. Helms will be once again funding the fireworks display, which always is an outstanding display. We'll be shooting it off the backs of the Salado Creek downstream from Sherrill Park. There also will be some activities that will take place prior to that. This is on it's always on the Saturday, 4th of July, after 4th of July. So July the 6th is when this will be, and staff's recommendation is approval. The fire department has approved the plans.
Questions, please? To John. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, please.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, likewise. Passes. E, discuss and consider possible action authorizing the transfer of title and ownership of a surplus 2010 Salado Police Department pickup truck to the Belton ISD'S Career and Technical Education Auto Technology Program.
Yes, sir, Mayor, at the last meeting, you declared this pickup truck as being surplus of some 135,000 miles, and it is crippled, to say the least, and probably not cost effective to repair. Rather than put it on the auction block, we felt like maybe it could be used for educational purposes, so we contacted Salado ISD to see if they had maybe an auto tech program that would be able to use it, and they didn't have a program available at this time for that, so we contacted Belton ISD, and they had a program, and as such, we're asking that you authorize the transfer of ownership of the vehicle to the district, and they will dismantle it, not in the form of a chop shop. They'll dismantle it, work it, and hopefully get it working again, put it back in service for their purpose.
Questions, please, to Don.
Don, we already had a motion that I thought we approved this, that we could direct the city administrator to dispose of this as he saw fit.
I'm not going to transfer the title of the vehicle without the board's authorization.
Any other
If it was
questions?
auction, we would have gone to auction without a problem, but when it comes to title transfer, everyone needs to get y'all's vote.
Any other questions to Don, please? I'll entertain a motion then.
Move to approve the title transfer to Belton ISD.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, please. Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, likewise. Passes. Number F, discuss and consider possible action to either cancel or change the meeting date for the regular Board of Aldermen meeting scheduled for Thursday, July 4th, 2019. July the 4th this year falls on the first Thursday. I don't know what the plans of the Board of Aldermen, each one, are. I don't even know what the plans would be for July 3rd or July 5th. But I'd like for all the aldermen to be here if we're going to do this. And if they can't be here, then I believe that we will have, I would offer to you that we not have a July 4th Board of Aldermen meeting, and that we have only one Board of Aldermen meeting for July, and that will be the third Thursday of July.
What's the third Thursday?
It is going to be the 18th.
I won't be here.
I won't
Then the next one would be what, the 1st of August? Done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then the next one would be 3rd of August. So what you've got before you is either to meet on July the 4th or the 3rd of August.
I won't be here on July 4th either, so I mean, I'm headed to Europe, so.
Okay.
What about the 3rd of July? I thought that was what was the proposal, was to meet on the 3rd of July.
Okay, you want to look at the 3rd of July?
It's good.
I'd rather not. If we're going to, we'll do it.
Make the motion.
Y'all want to go to the 3rd?
Is that going to be a special one, or is it just going to be a regular meeting, or how does the motion be?
That would be a special meeting, so.
So I move that we cancel our 4th of July regular meeting and conduct a 3 July special meeting.
That means you got to have 4. Are we sure we got 4? Or we call
And that's Alderman, not the mayor.
That's correct.
Didn't everybody say they were gonna be here?
I'll be here.
Everybody will be here.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
I have a question. Instead of making it a regular meeting, can we move our priorities workshop to that day? And then if we need to do any other business, we could do it that day too, but kind of get it all out of the way at one time.
Instead of 2 meetings?
Hmm?
Instead of having 2 meetings?
Well, because you were talking about having
Talking about doing the impact. meeting.
the one on the 20 whatever
Fifth.
5th, yeah, that. And so if the priorities meeting gets moved, we could have it on the 3rd. And if we have other things to vote on, you could do it on that day too, but just kind of lump it together on the 3rd.
We'll move the Reed deal. I mean, you continued it to August. He can make the 3rd.
That sounds like a lot to do in one day.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We're into discussion now. Is there any more discussion?
I mean, do you think that we could fit all of that in one meeting?
I don't think the Reed deal is going to be real long.
Okay.
Discussion. And I think if you put priorities, we include that as a workshop item on that agenda.
Okay.
I don't anticipate, we'll put building permit fee on there for second reading. I don't think there's going to be much more on the agenda. And unless we put an action item on there relating to impact fees, stemming from whatever workshop.
I would just say to get it all together in one fell swoop, so we don't have to meet again on the off day.
Frank, will you be here on the 3rd?
Him now. It's the middle of my vacation, but I'll be here.
Because you have to be the mayor.
Yes, sir.
On that one item.
I understand.
Or on that one item, that's correct.
So the 3rd,
And I'll tell you in a second. Do I hear a question? Call for the question.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, likewise passes. We will meet the 3rd.
3rd it is. You got it.
So are we canceling the 25th?
And I'm still we're going to try to make that into an impact fee discussion. With the FA and the bond council.
Attorney.
Well, this has been,
We're not done there. You got 2 things.
oh, yes.
So are we moving the goals workshop?
We'll move the goals workshop and make that part of the
Oh, yeah, sure.
3rd meeting. And
Turn it back
replace
over.
the goals workshop with potentially.
We gotta vote. Did we vote on it already?
Okay,
That's it?
no, we have one more.
No, that was it.
We have a memorandum. Number E and number D, this is ordinances. The addendum to the agenda. We're going into it right now. Number E. Consider approval of the first reading of an ordinance of the Village of Salado, Texas, amending ordinance number 2015.02, amending the method for calculation of the fee charged in the Village of Salado for residential building permits and inspection fees, providing for severability, repealing conflicting ordinances, and providing for findings of fact, an effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Don?
Yes, sir, members of the board, as we talked at the last meeting, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, took several actions that impacted the operation of cities. One of those was the adoption of House Bill 852, which quite frankly is a sweeping piece of legislation that is changing the building permit fee process for cities across the state of Texas. It's an immediate change. It's not a September change. This particular change basically modifies how cities can calculate building permit fees. In most communities, building permit fees are calculated based on the value of the construction that's done. In our case, we have a calculator. We simply add in the value of construction stated in the permit application, and it kicks out a fee that's intended to cover both the plan review, that's intended to cover the inspections, and intended to also provide money to the city coffers for processing of the permit. Well, they say in this legislation you can no longer do that. They're saying that you cannot base the building permit fee on the value of the dwelling or the cost of construction or improving the dwelling. In fact, this legislation says we don't have the legal authority to ask an applicant how much the work is worth unless it relates to a FEMA requirement in the floodplain, where we have certain provisions in there that allow for rebuilds at certain values. So what this is causing us and other communities across the state to do is to go ahead and modify the permitting process as far as how we calculate our fees. And what is proposed in working with our third-party contractor is that we modify our arrangement with them, our contract with them, and also adopt an ordinance amending our fee structure to basically set up a permitting process where we base our permitting fees on the square footage of the improvement that is planned as opposed to value. This only relates to residential construction, and I think that's really important to understand. It only relates to, it affects single-family home construction. And so this is what is proposed at this stage of the game, and ironically, it kind of fits in with what we're looking at bringing you as far as potentially a little bit of an increase in fees. It's been years, and I do mean many years, since we've adopted any type of increase relating to our building fees in this community. And so what we're looking at is basically a square footage based calculation for residential. Here's how it works out. For 0 to 1,500 square foot, the fee would be $785 plus a 10% percentage that goes to the city. For structures that are 1,500, 1 to 10,000, it's $785 for the first 1,500 and 35 cents for each additional square foot, including up to 10,000 square feet. Over 10,000 goes to $37.60 for the first 10,000 plus 15 for each additional square foot over 10,000 square feet. It also sets up specific permits, one-time permits of $100 per trade for building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fuel, and gas relating to that construction that is proposed. So in looking at this, the end result is a slight increase in the typical permit fee. We pulled an example of a home we just permitted of about 2,945 square feet. And under the old process of value-based construction, the permit would have been $1,363.66. Under the proposed, it goes up to $1,419.83. And so it's really rather simple. It's straightforward. It's not going to change any other permit. Fence permits are going to cost the same. Your pool permit is still going to be value-based. General electrical work will still be value-based. General plumbing work will still be value-based. This only relates to new construction and remodeling or additions to existing residential, existing living area. So what you have before you is, I believe, Mayor, you called the ordinance first or the agreement first?
The ordinance first.
The ordinance first, and it sets out the new fee structure and replaces the value-based permitting process. So we recommend it.
Okay. Discuss and consider approval of a proposed amendment to the professional service agreement between the Village of Salado and Bureau Veritas relating to fees charged for residential building plan review and inspection services.
You want to take a vote on the ordinance first?
Yes, but I wanted them to see this possible. So let's go with the ordinance first. If there are questions to Don, please address them.
Now, I got a question for you, Don, regarding the beer development that's going on out in Smith, Blanchard, and Royal. will he be exempt for this? Will he be the old fees or will he be attached to the new fees?
No, there are no permit applications. If there's a current permit application that's in place right now, that would exempt them from that standpoint. But if it's a new application, we don't have any permit applications right there right now, they're gonna be subject to the new fee. National sanctuary. If we don't have any building permits, we have construction permits.
So he's going to be dialed in all this new changes in all the business.
Everyone will, yes. The one thing we're gonna do, just so you know, and I think we mentioned this at the last meeting, is you adopt this ordinance tonight, we will go back and those permits that were issued in that interim period between when this law went into effect a couple of weeks ago versus now, we'll actually go in and see if there's a refund owed. We had issued very few permits in that interim period, so it's not gonna be any better.
Okay, thank you.
This is a straight scale, sliding scale. It doesn't have any weird numbers high or weird numbers low.
It works out anywhere from a 12 to 20% increase depending on the size of your building. I'm still waiting for that 10,000 square foot home that we've got in there.
In the sanctuary.
Yeah.
Any other questions, please?
Yes, Don, I have a quick question. You've got residential accessory building less than 150 feet. It's $35.
Yes.
So some pretty standard sizes for those are 10 by 16 and 12 by 16. So that jumps to $785.
No, those are not living areas. Those are not living. This only relates to square footage in regards to a home and any type of remodel, new home or any type of remodeling or addition. A separate storage building is permitted separately and it's not exempt.
Okay, but this says more than 150 square feet based on the schedule below. Well, the schedule below says it's $785.
That's for living area remodeling. That does not apply at all to,
Okay, then what would be the cost over 150 feet if it was 160 or 200?
there's a standard fee, and I don't have that available right off the top of my head, Frank. But there's a standard fixed fee on that.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah,
if I read this, it says based on the schedule below, and the schedule below says 0 to 1,500 square feet is $785.
yeah, it's not, there's separate fees that are related.
Okay, we need to get that straightened out.
We can clarify the language on that for you, take that.
Other questions, please? Then I'll consider a motion.
Motion to approve the fee schedule.
Motion is made to approve.
We accept an amendment with the clarification on
Source.
storage buildings or accessory buildings.
And we'll comb, what we'll do is we'll comb the whole thing, just to make sure there's no confusion. But basically, what we're doing right now, everything in residential that is pools, for example, are value-based. Fence and septic permits, storage building septic permits, those type of things. But this only relates to new homes and to additions to new homes. It doesn't relate to if you want to come in and put a water heater in at a later date, that's going to be value-based from that standpoint, if there's a plumber involved or an electrician involved. But we can go ahead and clarify that language for you. I think that's a good idea.
Would you accept that? John, what it's on?
Absolutely.
Okay, now could I have that whole motion again, please?
Motion to approve with language clarification.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, please.
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed likewise. Passes. All right, now then we're going to the one that I read, and this is the last one that we will do. Discussion, possible action. Discuss and consider approval, proposed amendment to the professional service agreement between the Village of Salado and Bureau Veritas relating to fees charged for residential building plan review and inspection services. Don?
Sir, it puts in place an amendment to our agreement with Bureau Veritas that matches the fees that you just put in the ordinance. We recommend approval.
Questions to Don, please. I'll entertain a motion, please.
Motion to approve the amendment to the agreement with Bureau Veritas.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion?
Question.
Question has been called. All in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, likewise. Passes. There is one other item of agenda. Is Margaret Blanton here? You fill this out, and I want to give you the opportunity. You have, if yes, you can speak up here if you wish, so everybody can hear. And again, Margaret, it's just like anything else. You have 3 minutes, your name. Okay.
I'm Margaret Blanton. My sister and I own the property at 231 North Main Street. We've been with the city off and on. We've talked with Don many times. He's been very helpful. He knows the situation. You probably know the old Norwood home sitting there. It was built in 1906, first 2 parts of it. My grandparents bought it in 1910. We keep it together, my brother used to say, with super glue and popsicle sticks. We just keep it together. And it's almost a museum with antiques and things that we've collected from our family. But nobody lives there. It is, you could live there, but not for very long without air conditioning and heating properly. It is partially air conditioned. But all I'm asking is, as you look at this across the board, please don't just limit it to, say, charitable enterprises or a certain group. If you could just look at the impact that this has on people in the long run, especially those of us who have the grinder pump issue. That was a $5,000 pump, I believe, that was put in by the city, which is an expensive item. We appreciate that. But all of us on the east side of Main Street didn't know that was coming. So now we have to hire an electrician in addition to the plumber. Our bill is probably going to be in the neighborhood of $3,500. We think, we hope. So just kind of keep that in mind. I don't know how many others there may be along that line, but I hope in your workshop that you come up with something that is very general as far as accepting people to apply for an exemption. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, before you adjourn, if I might point out, tomorrow morning, we're journeying to Austin, where one of our police officers is going to be recognized by the state of Texas, Texas Department of Public Safety, for his life-saving efforts on the interstate. You remember Chris and Trooper Michael, as we recognized it just a few months ago. I'm talking about Officer Dunshee. So keep him in your prayers as we move forward. I think it'll be a very special day. It's an award that is not handed out, quite frankly, on a regular basis by DPS. But they've scheduled a special presentation tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at DPS headquarters. After that, that's number one. Number two, and I see the old scoundrel hanging around in the back of the room over there, and that's Alderman McDougal, former Alderman McDougal. And that is, we have asked him if he would work with Superintendent Novotny to come up with a student of the year for next year to take the place of fill the shoes of Grace from this last year. So hopefully they'll work together and come up with. It's going to be hard to come up with someone to beat Grace and to beat her predecessor. But
I thought that went along with his seat over here. It's the only reason I wanted to move this over here.
No. Only the gateway sign goes along with that seat.
John, where is that going to be?
It's at DPS headquarters in Austin.
Where is that?
It's on Guadalupe Street in Austin.
Your address is 6100 Guadalupe Building E, the CID auditorium.
9 o'clock.
Can I say something real quick? He's getting the Director's Award, DPS Director's Award, which is, it is not given out very often. It's very special.
As we said.
John, if I cannot be there, I've asked Frank to represent us. I have to brief General White tomorrow.
John, I sort of want to backtrack on something that was brought up earlier tonight. And that was Mr. Reed coming in and submitting the packages. I think this is the 3rd time that he's done this. And I think at this point, honestly, I prefer just to take no action on that. Is there a way we can just move on to that?
You You could make a motion to reconsider the item before you adjourn. And Mayor, if it's the board's pleasure to vote to reconsider that item, you can recall the item and consider action on it if you like. Tonight.
I'm willing to do that.
So I need to make a motion now
You
to do
do,
that.
please.
I move that the board take no action.
Now, your first motion would be you move to reconsider the appeal for Board of Adjustment. Tonight.
Okay, and so we're effectively in Board of Adjustment session right now.
Go back into it.
Okay.
No, we haven't adjourned yet.
Okay, I move that we take whatever Don just said over there.
Don, what did you just say over there?
Alderman Coggin would like to take up Mr. Reed's item and make a decision tonight. So he's asking that the board consider a motion to reconsider that item and open the Board of Adjustment.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, please.
I agree with Mr. Cogan that this is not even an issue should be even at this board. It's an issue that's between two private parties and we should not be involved at all.
Other discussion, please.
And he's more than welcome to bring it up during the 3-minute discussion, at the very beginning of any other meeting during citizens communications.
Mayor, my suggestion, since you have potential conflict of interest in this, that you allow the Mayor Pro Tem to oversee the vote on this matter, any further discussion on it.
Michael McDougall, should I do that for Frank? Okay.
Board of Aldermen meeting is now in recess. We are now opening the Board of Adjustment meeting. Chair recognizes Mr. Coggin.
Did you vote on the motion to reconsider? I don't think so.
No, we haven't.
Close the Board of Adjustment, open the Board of Aldermen meeting. Mr. Coggin, would you restate your motion, please?
It's what Don said, to reopen the meeting and to take no action. To reconsider that action that Don just said.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Discussion?
Question.
All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes. Now recess the Board of Aldermen meeting and move into the Board of Adjustment meeting. Mr. Coggin.
You need to call the item as part of the Board of Adjustment, which is that first item on the agenda. It would be to discuss and consider possible action regarding an appeal of the village administrative decision regarding site development work at 20 Rock Creek Drive in Salado, Blanton.
Your Honor, move that we deny the appeal and take on for 20 Rock Creek Drive as presented to the Board of Adjustment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Are we denying it or just take no action? Is there a difference?
Believe your motion was to deny
To deny.
the petitioner. Okay. Discussion?
Same as before.
Keep in mind, it takes 4 members to approve motions from the OS.
Correct.
We're just gonna keep going.
We'll keep voting.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to deny the petitioner's request. All in favor, raise your hand. I'm going to vote for. Motion passes. So there was one vote against. Any other business for the Board of Adjustment?
I move we adjourn.
Board of Adjustment is adjourned. Someone like to ask the mayor to come in to adjourn the Board of Aldermen meeting.
Go ahead and adjourn it.
Is there a motion to adjourn the Board of Aldermen meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Second? We're adjourned.